Virtual summits are the most powerful online marketing tool available to grow your list, launch your platform, make more money, and create an impact in the world, even if you're just getting started. If you are ready to take your summit to the next level, then tune into the Virtual Summit podcast with Dr. Mark T. Wade.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mark T. Wade, founder of Virtual Summit Software and creator of the One Day Summit Formula. And I'm on a mission to help you, the summit host, get your summit out to the world in a powerful and impactful way. So let's get started. Hey, Summit hosts, Dr. Mark T. Wade here, founder of Virtual Summit Software and your host on this Virtual Summit podcast. Super excited about today's episode. We're going to be talking with a very, very special person. Dr. Shiroko is joining us today on the Virtual Summit podcast. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your schedule today.
Thank you for having me.
It's going to be super great. I'm really excited about the information we're going to be talking about. So for all you Summit hosts listening in here, we're going to be taking a slightly different approach or angle today. In most of our episodes, we're talking about ways to scale, grow, build the list, also create the income for your business directly. But what we're going to get in today is a very special and unique way to do your summit, and one that I think is going to resonate with a lot of people. And I'm super excited to pick your brain about that, Shiroko. But before we get into those summit details, I'd love for you to just take a quick second and kind of tell our audience just a little bit more about yourself.
Sure. So I'm a medical doctor and an acupuncturist. I've been in practice in Santa Rosa, California for more than 25 years, doing both Chinese and Western medicine, and help people heal when it seems impossible. So I help people recover from difficult health issues. Because of what I do, I'm able to get deeper into people's mysterious illnesses. That's what I mostly do. I'm also the author of the book, Healing When It Seems Impossible, 7 Keys to Defy the Odds, which I'm really excited about.
Excellent. So I highly recommend everybody check that out. We'll link to those in the show notes over at podcast.virtualsummits.com. And also, Shiroko, where can people find you hanging out on social?
My Facebook page is Heart to Heart Medical Center, which is the name of my business. And then I'm Dr. Shiroko on Twitter and Dr. Shiroko on Instagram.
Excellent. So go check out Dr. Shiroko over there, learn more about what she's going, check out her book. It's going to be super interesting to read and really valuable and beneficial for those of you out there also on your health journey as well. So let's jump into the summit aspect of this. I'm so excited. I want to get into this because we have not talked about a summit like this. So I'm going to let you go ahead and explain a little bit about, first off, what is the summit that you created? Mm-hmm. And then why did you actually decide to create this?
Sure. So the summit that I did is called the Disaster Recovery Summit. And it happened because in 2017, in October, the community that I work and live in went up in flames. So Santa Rosa lost 6,000 homes to fire. And there were I think there were 3 major fires that broke out in that area in the course of that in one night. And most of the fancier homes in the community burned down. And my office was evacuated and I was unable to work for a week, which was stressful for me, but also stressful for my patients. So I knew people were under severe stress, and so I was looking for offices to work out of and to figure out ways to help people. But then the next thing that happened was, here we are, we're sitting in this community that's usually just beautiful and enveloped in smoke, and smoke is toxic. It has many kinds of bad elements in it for your health. And I began to think, well, what are people doing for their health? And that same year there were 3 major hurricanes on land in the U.S. and in Puerto Rico. So there was a lot of disasters that impacted people's lives majorly. And I was like, what can I do to help people? And I realized that there was nothing out there that talked about the health effects of various different disasters. So with a hurricane, there were mold issues. And then there's, of course, the stress and trauma of having to evacuate your home in a moment's notice. So, a lot of my patients left their homes in the middle of the night. The fire happened in the middle of the night. And most of the people the stories that I heard were so incredible, or people woke up and nobody warned anybody, so that the people escaping from their homes, it was a miracle for a lot of them. Like at 3 a.m, some light was shining in their window and they woke up. One lady thought that World War III had started.
Virtual Summit's software makes hosting a summit easier than ever. The only software in the world designed specifically for hosting a summit lets you set up a summit in a matter of hours with no tech skill or team needed. You can try out the Virtual Summit's software free at virtualsummits.com. But hurry, this is a limited offer.
and another patient of mine lived in a restaurant that, like, above the restaurant that she owned, and the flames were coming at them, and she woke up because she heard a noise outside and escaped, like literally with the flames chasing them down the street. So there were those kinds of stories which are traumatic to your health and to your physical and to your mental situation. So I was just like, okay, I'm going to put together an event. And then there was the issue of, where was the money going to come from? So I actually talked to the Health Talks Online about it, and we created this event, and they sponsored it, or they, whatever you do, call that, and I hosted it and got together experts on various different health issues related to disasters. And then all proceeds that came from that, and it's still online and still available for people to access at no cost, but any donations were given to charity and to specific charities that helped people in disasters. And I found a few charities. Sorry, I can't remember their names at the moment. And so over the course of the year, periodically, whenever there's a disaster, I send out an email saying, here, this is available for free to anybody. Please, if you want to donate money to people who help with charities, or with disasters, so we can help them.
This resonates with me like so much right now, Shiroko. I'm loving everything I'm hearing. I think this is such an interesting topic we're talking about. Again, one that we haven't talked about before. So our summit hosts out there, most of us, when we think about doing a summit, we're thinking about how can I expand my business? How can I generate more leads? How can I build authority around my topic or enter into a new market? So Shiroko, you came from this from an angle of you need to help people who are who need the help, who are kind of in these disaster scenarios. What I really love about this, and then we're going to dive deeper into it, is the fact that this does live on. Like for me, one of my core values is leave a legacy. And this to me is an amazing example of how you were, one way that you're able to leave a legacy. This is going to live on, well past you, like well past your vision of it. You can pass it down to somebody else, or hopefully somebody out there will, step up and be like, this needs to be like in every major area that's having a disaster. So this is a great example of how, like, when you think outside the box. So for our summit hosts that are listening into this, like, you can think outside the box. Like, you don't just need to think about how to build your business, how to expand the income and revenue of your business. Think about how can you give back to the world? Because in my opinion, summits are one of the most important assets that we can do as business owners, as entrepreneurs, because there are people suffering out there in the world. And this provides a way for those people who are suffering to have their problems solved by getting access to experts that have the solution who they may not have ever had the chance to meet before. So this is awesome. I want to say thank you, one, just for taking that on yourselves. Definitely going to say big thank you to Health Talks Online. We got Bobby on the podcast as well, so we'll definitely give him a shout out and link to him. Any of the information, if you want to go check out this disaster recovery summit, or you want to share it with people in your community, you can get all that information over in the show notes. So let's dive a little bit deeper in this. So when you had this, you're in the middle of a crisis scenario yourself. So like, this is pretty impressive that you were able to be so, quick on the feet. Like, let's take on this massive kind of undertaking in the middle of a crisis. But when you did decide to do that, well, first off, how did you even come up with the idea of the summit? Had you seen summits before? Have you been on summits before? How did you even think of a summit first off?
Well, I've been on many summits, because I have a unique expertise where I blend Chinese and Western medicine, and so that approach to many health conditions is valuable in all kinds of situations. So, but I think it was just that so painful to me to have so many people suffering, and to, because of that year, it was just so drastic in our own country, where people were struggling with huge, huge disasters, all the hurricanes and then the fires. And then, the fires have continued here in California. I think last summer, there was almost no day where we had clean air through the summer, because there were fires somewhere all the time. And even in November, there was that huge campfire. And the smoke affected the Bay Area because there was some sort of inversion. And so for 2 weeks, we had worse air quality than Beijing. So I just was thinking, what can I do to help people and what's happening? And of course, I'm always oriented towards health. And so I realized that there was nothing out there that helped people deal with the health effects of these major disasters. And so many people, after having a disaster, of course, in the moments of disaster, and possibly, it's been more than a year now in Santa Rosa, people are still not back on their feet. There's so many people don't have homes yet. Many people left the area. The community was devastated on so many levels, and in the immediate after effect, not that many people were thinking about their health, except for the emotional trauma, and the people who were actually most emotionally traumatized immediately were the ones who didn't lose their home because they had some sort of survivor's guilt, like they escaped by the skin of their teeth and their home maybe didn't burn, but then they were like, oh my God, my home didn't burn, but my neighbor's home did. And so there was so much of that going on. And so it was natural to me really to think about, okay, so what can I do? And then I talked to Bobby and he was so kind. And their whole team just like jumped in and helped me put this thing together because I would never have been able to do it because I'm not a techie.
Well, let me jump in here a little bit with that as well, because I'm going to ask you about the creation process. But before we get into that, like what was your goal when you said, okay, now I'm going to do this. You have the idea. What was the goal specifically, and who exactly was your target?
The goal was to give people health information in the event of various disasters that could use to help themselves, so like there was one lady who talked about the emotional trauma and things she could do in the moment, like, cause there were many kids who lost homes and so actually there's several people who talked about that emotional, like the level of stress that people were experiencing and what to do in the moment, like just take a few deep breaths or different breathing techniques or different thinking techniques that would help people in those very stressful moments. What to do if there was mold, and in a hurricane where there's flooding, there's going to be mold. And what to do about that. And so basically, my goal was to give people information. It was to give people needed information and to provide something that would help.
Excellent. So to provide them with a resource that would help them in going through this process, did you have any measurable, did you set any kind of measurable kind of KPIs for this as far as, did you have like a lead goal? Did you have like a certain reach goal? And tell us about kind of the launch process. What was, because we're coming from the minds of virtual summit hosts. So a lot of the audience right now is thinking, okay, when I build out a summit, I'm either going for a monetary goal or a lead goal or an authority or impact goal. So to hear this idea, it can probably spur, for example, in one of my companies, we're in the process of creating a nonprofit. So now you have my mind going around how we could provide and give back in this area. But then my analytical side is, how do I measure that? How do I determine? So did you have any kind of goals? And then how did you ensure that what you were doing was a success, at least by your standards, for example?
Yeah. So my personality is a quick start. I don't know if and that kind of personality testing. So I just jump in with both feet and do things, right? So I didn't think about any of that really, although the after effect was that my list did grow by about 4,500 people. So, which was not as many as I had hoped, because I wanted to reach thousands, you know. So I had hoped that would reach 100,000 people, because there were that more than that people affected by this event. And so, and you know, I reached out to I'm in the Mindshare community, and I reached out to the community, and I told people what I was doing. And so many people volunteered to help on some level. But in the sending it out, and by the time that we were able to launch the summit was in February, which was several months after the fires and several months after the hurricanes, you know. And so people's minds were not necessarily on disasters. And so I don't know if maybe it would have been better to call it a trauma recovery, because people have traumas in their lives every day, you know. So disasters happen, although lately there have been so many disasters, you know. There was the tornado in Alabama, and there's just like a disaster almost every day lately. So maybe the time for the summit is now arriving. I don't know. But the other difficulty was getting affiliates to really jump on it, because there wasn't any monetary gain. It was all for charity. So there was a little bit, maybe less action on that end of it. And I don't know, you know, there wasn't a lot of time for planning, because I had this like little window where Health Means had a week that hasn't been scheduled, which was a miracle. And they were willing to donate in such an amazingly generous way, you know. So there was all that, but it's still online, and it's evergreen, and there's still, you know. So periodically, I send it out to people.
Be sure to check out the speaker management tool inside your virtual summit software, which lets you quickly and easily recruit and manage your speakers on your virtual summit, literally eliminating hundreds of hours of work. Get more information at virtualsummits.com.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So with that, and some of the other interviews we've done, there's actually one for the summit host listening in. You can check into Lisa's episode. She actually talked about how, you know, she had done multiple summits that were a big success, and then she ended up doing a summit by her standards that she called bombed, and she actually relaunched it later, made a couple changes, and it was a huge success. So there's always the opportunity and possibility for all of our summit hosts listening in. If a summit that you run hasn't quite gotten to the standards that you want, you can always do some changes. You could retitle it, for example, as you just suggested, Shiroko, and relaunch in a different time, different place. Also establishing collaborative or strategic partnerships with potentially disaster agencies. I mean, I don't know what you call those, but like the agencies that help people throughout, you know, like Red Cross, maybe, for example, things like that would be another way that people have immediate access to this resource. So these are all really good points in teaching opportunities that we're getting into. Mm-hmm. So I'd love to talk a little bit about the creation process. So because you had a very short window of time to do this, most of our summit hosts, I mean, they're planning 3 to 4 to 5 to 6 months out. So this is extremely impressive. You were able to do this in such a short window of time. So the first thing, how did you decide on the category? So this is very interesting, the topic of the summit. So how did you decide on the categories, and what were just a couple of them?
So of course there was the immediate, you know, in my community, the fire and the effect of smoke and the health effects of inhalation of smoke. So there's the health effects of various different disasters. So that was my first category, was to find experts in various different health issues like mold recovery. I can't remember all the other issues. Parasites, because if you're exposed to, you know, flooding, then there's parasites and different infections that you could get. And then there was the emotional effects of, so I basically had several different categories: the health effects of different kinds of disasters, emotional effects of that kind of trauma. And then I had a few people that I interviewed with stories of hope who had recovered from different, like one lady was in an earthquake, and another friend of mine was in a hurricane the year before, and what happened to her and how she recovered. And she lives in hurricane land, so like, how do you live that way? And one of my patients was actually in the Oakland fires about 25 years ago. And when these fires happened, he was like, anything I can do to help anybody. And so I interviewed him to have him tell about what happened to him and how he recovered, so to give people hope. And I can't remember the other categories at the moment, but those were the three main ones as to.
Yeah. And those are very interesting as well. And it makes a lot of sense here. You're looking at not just the fires, but across the board. This is one of the foundations we always talk about on summits is creativity is key. I mean, you can do a standard summit, but the more creative you are, the better. And this was an extremely creative summit in such a short amount of time. So can you walk us through? It was, I believe you said it was about a 2-week process, 2-week time frame, and you can correct me on that. But walk us kind of through just the high level. Like, I had to do this within the first couple of days. I had to have this done by the end of the week. Like, what was that process like?
Well, and again, I had the amazing help of Health Means, and so they did all of the back end. So all I had to do was find the speakers. So I had to find speakers. I had to organize interviews. I'd never done any of this. I've been interviewed hundreds of times, but I had not organized speakers and created the interview. So, I had to figure that system out. And they told me, well, we want it. So the fires here in October, and I was traveling a lot at the time. So I was getting certified in functional medicine at the time. So, and I have a full-time practice. And I had the idea in early November. And then I talked to Bobby and they agreed to do it. And so it was right around Thanksgiving that I started the interview process. The goal was to be done before Christmas with all the interviews, and to talk to and to have it ready for the launch in February. So a very short period of time to put it together. I had amazingly generous people who agreed to be interviewed, and during the week between Christmas and New Year's, which was when I wasn't in my office working, so I had more flexibility in my schedule. So a lot of people just came up out of the woodworks and agreed to be interviewed and to help with the process. And people volunteered names of experts in different things, different trauma techniques, and different health issues. So, and the videos aren't very great because Health Means kind of they didn't edit very much, So the goal they said, we don't have a lot of time, so you have to do the interview, and it's not going to be edited. It's going to be just like this. And I wasn't an expert on, even how I looked on camera. So the content is great, but the visuals are not necessarily great. So,
well, no, this just shows again ability to adapt and overcome. You had 2 weeks to do a summit, essentially. A few weeks to get a summit out is a major feat for anybody. Even having help, or using a consultant, or using the virtual summit software, any of that would still be extremely like a huge accomplishment to have it done in that time. And it also goes to show that even for those summit hosts out there that are like, well, I don't know where to start, I don't know how to do this, like I've never done a summit before, or maybe I have never had experience interviewing, just all these things that you're telling us right now, Shiroko, that these are perfect teaching moments for our summit hosts that are listening in. You don't have to have all the answers. Just get started, and it doesn't have to be perfect either. The outcome, the impact, your ability to change and help the world is still going to be able to happen even if your video isn't perfect. So I love that you're being fully transparent with us. This is amazing information for the summit hosts listening in, because this is what they're worried about. This is what's holding a lot of them back. And I hope you all are listening to this and understanding that you can just move forward and make it happen. So as we start to round out this episode here, I'd like to actually talk about some of the learning lessons or learning points you had from your summit. Like, was there one or maybe two big takeaways that you learned that if you had to go back and do it over, how you would change it and what you would do differently?
Well, I'd have more time. And, now I know a lot more things about like how to look a little bit better on camera and things like that. So the getting other people involved, like to get people involved. And there were many people who I'll send it out, or I'll do this or I'll do that. But maybe because there wasn't that much time to plan it, and people have their calendars booked so much in advance already. So then for them to fit that into their schedule, into their promotional schedule. So if you do have the time, you're not putting something together in like a month, then it's great to give people like 6 months to put it in their calendar, and to engage people personally. For me, it's like my business is called Heart to Heart, because I'm all about that personal connection and that personal engagement. And so when you ask people to help you promote something, to really just be connected to the significance and the importance of what it is you're doing, what your message is, and the connection that you have with that person, because each connection is that important. I think that was the most important thing about it.
With the Ever Summit feature inside the Virtual Summit software, you can rerun your summit as if it were live, ongoing forever with one click of a button. This now lets you continue to use your summit forever, bringing in qualified and engaged leads every month into your business. Get more information at virtualsummit.com.
And you bring up an amazing point here as well, is the relationships. I mean, summits are so powerful for building out networking and relationships and connections that are going to live ongoing. We've had many summit hosts talk about the opportunities that opened up for them, the relationships for their business, also and just in their life that have come from doing summits. So that's another amazing aspect or point there. Let's dissect that. So after somebody goes through the summit and they opt in, they get access to this what's kind of their next steps? Like, what's the next aspect that they should be doing?
So they're on an email list, and they are in my email list at the moment. And I have not really built a back end around it, so because the goal was to just provide them with this assistance, and I being, again, a quick start, I didn't think forward. I thought, I got to help these people. This is what they need. Here it is. So, and I have had many ideas, but I was also, and last year I launched a book, and interestingly, because the title of my book, I worked on my book for like 5 years, and the title of it arrived shortly before all the disasters occurred. It's like, I was like, what am I going to call this book? What am I going to call this book? And finally the name came, and then all these disasters came, and it was like, my book's title is Healing When It Seems Impossible. And so to some degree, I'm always giving people information about difficult issues, health issues, and how to heal them. And so, but I haven't really done a lot of follow through in terms of how, like, to provide information after a disaster, and here's what you do. And, I gave the basic information, but then it hasn't gone well. Yeah.
I'd say this
So
would
you're
be
giving me ideas now.
absolutely. And I'd see this be a great idea or a great opportunity for anybody listening in right now. If you're feeling that passion, you're feeling that connection that Shiroko has been talking about, and you feel compelled with it, with this incentive in this direction, that maybe reach out to Shiroko. Maybe you can help her on this side of it. Maybe there's some collaboration opportunities in the future, because I see a huge opportunity here. One, for helping people, which is, again, always my main focus with summits. One of my top KPIs, key performance indicators for all of my summits, is how many lives were changed. And I measure that based on how many people reach out after the summit and say, you changed my life because of this information, or you changed my business because of this information, you changed my relationship. How many lives were changed? And so I see a huge opportunity for lives to continue to be changed. I also see a huge opportunity for charity, donations, revenue sources. And then, of course, for both you and anybody else who wanted to get involved, to probably be those shining stars, those angels, in the world that are helping people. So anybody out there listening in, if you feel compelled here, I'd recommend getting in touch with Shiroko, and you guys can discuss this further. Now, as we wrap this out, Shiroko, first off, I thank you so much for taking the time, one, just to be here and kind of open your heart and share this information, and being so transparent and letting us see summits from a completely different light, which has been a phenomenal experience. Now, we have a lot of summit hosts who are listening in, and many of them are looking for speakers on their summits. So if somebody wanted to reach out to you to possibly speak on their summit, what would be a couple good topics that you would be able to speak on, and then how should they get in touch with you?
Well, my website is hearttoheartmedicalcenter.com, and all the contact information is right there, including the Disaster Recovery Summit is on my website for people to access. And I would love, because that's one of the things, is having collaborators and having people participate in making it bigger. It's gone as far as it's gone with me sort of doing it sort of on my own since the event ended, right? So it'd be great to get it out there to more people, because there's hundreds of thousands of people a year who are in trouble with some kind of disaster. I'm an expert on women's health, women's hormonal issues, not just women's hormonal issues, but how to balance hormones. I'm an expert on Chinese medicine, and Chinese medicine is this magical, amazing healing modality for many difficult health problems. And so I'm also an expert on autoimmune thyroid issues and pain. Those are kinds of the digestion. Those are the things that I see the most in my practice, and that I can, really talk about. So.
I love those. And so, summit hosts listening in, there you have it. You can reach out to Shiroko to have her as a expert speaker on your summit if those topics fit into your summit. And again, I just want to say thank you so much, Shiroko, for taking the time out of your schedule, sharing this information. I know I've learned a lot, and I've seen a whole new perspective of summits, one that I can't wait to actually talk more about with my audience, my community. And a call to action for all of you summit hosts listening out there: go to the show notes, get the link for the Disaster Recovery Summit, share that with your community, share that with people in power and authority that have the ability to get this out to people who are suffering, who are having these disaster areas. I know this is very meaningful for me living here in Puerto Rico. As you mentioned, we had some hurricanes previously, and I'm sure there'll be, unfortunately, more in our future. So this is a resource I look forward to sharing here on the island. And just one final time, Shiroko, thank you so much for taking the time to share with us today.
Thank you for having me. It was delightful talking to you.
Absolutely. And thank you, Summit hosts, for listening in as well. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks for listening. Now don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review on the Virtual Summit podcast. Head over to the show notes to check out all the links and resources from this episode, and be sure to grab your free trial of the Virtual Summit software.
Now, I want to end this episode by saying to all the Summit hosts listening right now, I believe in you, and you can do this. Summits are by far one of the most powerful ways to quickly grow your list, launch your platform, make more money, and most importantly, make an impact in the world, even if you're just getting started. So don't get caught up in analysis paralysis, because the world needs to hear your message, and there are people who are waiting for you to help them. So just get started, because imperfect action is always better than no action. Thank you, and see you on the next episode.